All right. So you're welcome, guys. Welcome everybody to another class. This is officially like the last class of the month. I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the last class of this month, and we've, essentially, we have gone quite far. We have finished up with, well, let's say, um, from the projection of what I thought it would be, we're pretty much on point with my plan for the classes. Last week, we really dived deep into the capstone project, and as many of us that have not started, I would advise that we go ahead. I think all the recordings are on the group, and yeah, just let's just try to be quite available for the classes. Both the online
Sir,
and
please, please record this, sir.
this should be week 7. Yeah, so let's just try and be available for the classes. All right, so at this point, we are going to kick off today. Um, I think before I move on with that, I know I saw someone's work. I don't know. I keep forgetting the Charles. Which Charles sent that on the group? Charles who? Is it Charles? Is it this Charles Chikubi or another Charles? Just to clarify, because I was trying to get that
Okay, it's
video.
Charles Chukwu.
Okay, okay.
My
That
Charles.
video you sent to the group. I can't access it again for whatever reason.
Oh,
But yeah, nice work. It was
okay.
good. That was actually very good. Like I said, I could see that you were quite busy. You have been working a
Ah,
lot, and I know that thing doesn't do itself. You took out time to create something nice. Yeah, nice
thank you,
work.
sir. A lot of time.
Yeah, you know, I'm actually wanted to see if I could give some feedback on that. Which is altogether, I think it was pretty much on point. Um, One thing that's really, I would try to encourage you to see if you can improve on, which is already very, very good on its own. I'm just trying to be more ambitious. The last
Okay.
part where you had the products, I would have shown it here, but I don't have to follow my system. So, but the last part
Okay.
where you had stuff spin, I think you should try to, because it looks flat, right? I know it's a 3D object in your After Effects scene. But when it turns, you could tell that it's
Mm.
flat. That's so it breaks the whole
Oh,
illusion that we're trying to create. So if you can actually make it not flat, right? If you can actually make it
okay.
3D in that sense. So when you rotate it, it's not like just a flat object.
A flat object.
So
Okay.
yeah, so you could make use of you could just try After Effects and see how you can work with that, or you can use Blender. You can use
Okay.
Blender and use that. Just do a very simple, sachet, stuff design. Then if you export that in your After Effects I mean, you export it from Blender to After Effects, you just replace that particular shot with a 3D render, right?
Okay.
I think that would be nice, but I know that that's like a far, like what I'm asking is actually quite ambitious, and I understand, but I'm just saying if you can just try
Yeah.
and see how you can work with that. That would be very nice.
Okay, sir. I'll try
Okay,
that.
all right. So I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to share. Um, Anything else they want to share? Maybe your progress so far on the project. Anything you want to share before we move on? Because I always love to see what we are working on. If not, we'll just move ahead. But any other updates besides that? Okay, so I guess we would move on then. All right. So today, like I said on our last class, we are going to really focus more on advanced stuff now. Although I don't like using this kind of terms because it sort of makes people like, somehow like, oh, advanced, it will be difficult, things like that. But yeah, we're gonna like move into like more interesting, in my own perspective, more interesting aspects of animation. So today and from now on, the primary goal and focus is for us to finish our capstone project. That is generally the idea. From now till we're done with this program, that's what we're going to try and work on and keep improving on. So that when we're done with this class and this program, we know that yes, I have something to show for my learning. If you say you learn something and there's nothing that nobody can see from it, then it's just not true, right? So the idea is that at the end of this, would have a sort of work that we can show someone that this is what I did, to prove that I learned something. That's the idea. But even as we continue with classes, we're going to be having just some, well, I say, side work besides the capstone project that we're already working on. So I want to just go a little bit further into the animation aspect. And today we will talk about a work cycle. Basically, we'll talk about a work cycle. Well, maybe not a work cycle per se, but we're going to focus more on animation acting, right? I think that would, okay, I guess that's what we'll cover really next class, but today we're just going to just focus on actually animating a character now. For a while we've been talking about just the abstract principles of animation, all the 12 principles, and also applying those principles to like objects, as we have been doing on our different personal projects, applying those animation to like text, images, doing Lottie files here and there. But now we want to apply this to like an actual character animation, right? Like an actual character, not just an abstract thing somewhere. So that's the idea. So we'll kick off with a work cycle. But I think that's one of the like not most difficult, but one of the most challenging and interesting aspects in animation, in my opinion. Because works can be so dynamic, works can be so complex, works can be so simple, works can also be very entertaining, So yeah, from here on, we're going to just focus more on animation acting and character animation. So with this class, I will quickly run through what we are doing. Maybe I will share my screen now, so follow along, follow along with what I'm talking about. Let me see. How do I even spell Google again? Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so all right. So how do we what do we do when it comes to making a work cycle? Well, how do we actually like do a work cycle? We apply all the principles that we have learned from the beginning, okay? What I want to simply do in this class is I want to create a work cycle, but I'm gonna try to use two different tools. I will try to use a 3D software and also try to use a 2D software, right? So I would make use of Blender. We already have Blender. We should have Blender by now. We should be a bit familiar with Blender because I've shared so many resources up until now. So if you've not watched any of the videos at all, then you're probably going to like be totally lost, which is not my fault. But we're going to continue with the Blender. We're going to use Blender for just get a sample character. So what I will do is that I will go head over to Blender's website. Now, please don't go to blender.com. Right? Blender.com will take you to a Blender website. It's not the kind of Blender we're talking about. We're talking about an actual software, right? So blender.org. That's where we will find our 3D software. Then we head over to download. Then we head over to demo files right here. Demo files. Okay, so once we have that opened up, there are a lot of like sample project that you can just download for free, right? But the one I want to use in this class particularly is the one that has an animation rig, right? I think I'll scroll down a bit. There are some nice Blender files here. If I can find those files, yeah, here they are. So I'll download this animation fundamentals week. So from here is where we would so just download button here. Yeah, so this is a very nice sample project for you to try out your animation. I think I'll just save this in my compressed folder. So let that download. So while that's downloading, so like I said, we're going to use two software. Now, like I always tell you, software is not the idea. It's not like you must use a particular software. It's about knowing how to animate, right? So but for this particular case and this scenario, I'm going to make use of another 2D software that's also very, very nice. I'll make use of Moho, right? You might not have heard of Moho before, but it's a very popular software. Moho. Um, maybe I'll share the link. I'll share the link on the group so you can check it out if you want to download that software. Right? Depends on what you want. I would use the version 14. Moho 14. This is a 2D software. I will share this one's link as well so you can try it out if you're interested. So this is a software for creating 2D animation. It's primarily used for, it's not really used for frame by frame. I know I talked about types of animation before now. I'm sure I must have defined that there are different kind of 2D animation. There's frame by frame animation. There is also what they call puppet animation, right? This is more of a puppet animation software where you have a character that has bones, right? And then you can manipulate those bones like a puppet, right? Basically. But remind you, it's a 2D, it's a flat object. It's not actually 3D, right? So that's why it's called a 2D puppet animation software. Primarily, that's the idea. So we'll try to create a work cycle with this. This is already an animation that was done before now, but so we're going to create so first of all, you don't have to use version 14. I think version 14 is there are so many versions that you can try out there. Version 12, 11. I will share the link. So after this class, you can just head over and just download it yourself and play with it. So whatever software or character you have, that's totally fine. I want to just implement the principle of a work cycle on any character, essentially. That's the idea. So let's see how far our Blender has gone. Blender file. I think it should be done by now. So I'll first kick off with Blender because that's what everybody should have right now. So I know some of us prefer 3D to 2D. We like more of this realistic than cartoon style, whichever you prefer. I'll just quickly run through it. So like I said, we have entered this is a new chapter, essentially. We are going into more of character animation. But keep in mind the things we have learned for now will also play a very key role in what we are going to be animating. So let me check my folder. I think we have here. This is the rig. Yeah, that's the folder. So once you have your file downloaded, I will share this link out as well. So you just extract it to your laptop or to your PC. Right? Open up the folder and you'll find so many options here. Right? You have a ball rig, you have ball that has a leg, ball that has a tail, pendulum, sky. So I'm going to use this one. Let me see. I think I'll use this. Let me see how this looks like, right? So I'm going to open the Sky Blender file. That's where the rig is found, right? Double tap that and it will open up the Blender file we'll use for this class. Okay, yeah, so this is the first way it's gonna look. So what I would do is that I would come over here. See, there's an option here, there's an arrow here. I'll just click that option. It will bring out these extra options here. I also want to enable my gizmo. Yeah, it's supposed to be a gizmo here. So if you click this option here, well, So I have to move my mouse a bit. Okay. So for some reason it's not really showing up here. So the reason why I like that gizmo is just to be able to rotate around my camera, easily. So what I will do is that I'll come over here. Let me see. Let me see. All right. So what I'll do is I'll come over here. I'll click this plus, right? This plus button here, and I would select general, and I'll select layout. Okay. So now I have this gizmo back here. That's what I'm looking for. So I can quickly just zoom in and yeah, see my character in full view. Before now, I've told you guys that you guys should get familiar with the 3D workspace so you can easily navigate your space, right? So this should not really be a problem. Opening up the file and setting it up like this. So now let's open up our timeline and let's see what we have here. So there is no animation currently. That's fine. So now, what is a work cycle? How does a work cycle go? Okay. Let me see if I can open up. So what I recommend that you do most of the time is that you don't just assume you know something. You have to watch a reference, right? You have to watch real life reference videos. Because if you just say, I know how to animate a work cycle, you might actually be very wrong, right? So what I would recommend that you do is that you go over on YouTube. There's so many reference videos that you can find. So I will just search for a work cycle reference, right? Maybe I'll use side view. If I can find a side view. I want to have the side view. Yeah, so this is a very nice. So let's see this example here, right? So from the way the work cycle goes, there are like 4 major positions when someone is walking, right? You have the part where the legs are evenly spread out like this, right? This is more or less the contact pose where the leg makes contact with the ground, right? Um, then we also have the passing pose, which is when the leg passes, this leg is passing. So like we have this first position, right? So this is the first position here. This is the contact pose. The leg touches the ground, right? This is one key pose. This is a key pose, very important, right? Then after this, there's another important pose where the leg passes. This is called the passing position, where the leg is passing, to go to the other side, right? And then just like you reverse that contact pose, where this leg makes contact with the ground as well, right? Then secondly, we have another passing position here where the leg passes and then just keeps reversing like that. So that's generally how a walk cycle goes. So why I'm doing this is because when we are going to animate this, we're going to have this as a reference, so we know how to put the layers and the keyframes per time. Okay, so what I'll do now, I am going to kick off with the animation. So first things first, I think I would start off with I'll select my rig, right? So like I told you, like 3D animation is just like a puppet. So this is my rig where all the controls are for my character, right? So once you have your rig selected, you're going to go over to here and you go to pose mode. Pose mode is where you pose your character, right, to a certain pose. And you adjust this pose per time. So it's going to animate it. So I'm going to show you a very practical example. So first of all, I can see that there is a keyframe here, right? I don't want this keyframe to be here. So I'm going to first of all, I'm going to select all my frames, or just press A on your keyboard. You're going to select all your controls, right? Then I'm going to delete this frame because I don't want any frame there. I don't want any frame here too. I just want one frame. Okay. So I want a frame that looks let's see, like this. Let's start off with the first key pose, the contact pose. Something like I want a frame like this, right? So I'm going to now adjust my character to fit into that position. So I'm going to just use my side view for the sake of this action. select everything. Now, remember how you keyframe, right? Remember I told you press I, and then you can click to keyframe any property. But in this case, I'm going to just select available. Available means it will just keyframe whatever is available, which is probably like the best thing. So once you have that keyframed, also enable. Now, currently, I have enabled auto keyframing. And if you remember what this means is that whenever I move something in my timeline, I don't have to come over and click this eye again because it has already been set to auto keyframe, right? So first of all, let's move this character into the correct position. So I would select the, where are you here? Yeah. So I will have to move this leg a bit. Let's see. So just get used to how you move, you know, a character. It's like a puppet. Just think of it like a puppet, right? So I can move it in my 3D space, like this. So I select a control, like the leg control. I use my G option, right? G is to move something, or I use this option here to move. Okay. So whichever I prefer, I would move that control. Please, I think someone is on. I'm hearing a background sound. Okay, so when we have the option here, so we can move any control that we want. So I'm going to move this control to align with the what I have here, essentially. Okay, so it's I have to be very intentional. So I'm going to just use my G option to move it. I'm going to move it like this. Then I think this leg goes forward. So I move it like this. Remember I told you can move things on different axes. You can move things on the Y axis, on the X axis, on the Z axis. In this case, I want to move it in this direction. Okay. So it will be more like this. Then I think the leg bends like this. So I would use my rotation tool, rotate the leg like this. Okay. Look at that thing again. Let's move this back a bit. Then okay. Then which other things? I think let's try to move. Let's just leave the hands for now. Let's just use only the legs. Let's see how this works. Okay. So it seems like I moved my frame by mistake, right? So let me move this back into the frame one. It's supposed to be in frame one. Okay. So after this, what's the next key pose I told you about? That's the passing position, which is this somewhere around here. Okay. So I'm going to do that same thing here. I'll just move my timeline a bit forward, and I would first of all, don't forget, once you have selected your position, I advise, right? It's not, you don't have to obey what I'm saying, but I think it's quite nice for you to select just press A on your keyboard, select all your controls, press I and keyframe it. Everything should be keyframed. Now move to your next position. Come over here and I'm going to move this leg like this, right? This one too would probably be more like, let me rotate this a bit. So it's like this. Then I move this like this, right? This should be rotated a bit. Okay, so let me select everything again and move it here. So now what happens is that you see we have two key poses. We have this pose and this pose. Now the computer basically is helping us to add in between frames to our animation. So if I were to play back this animation, for example, we know we just said two keyframes, right? But because we have the software helping us do the in-betweens, it's going to move the legs as it should, right? So these things, I didn't add them. It was animated by itself. But I have the key poses already, so it can fill in the gaps for me. Okay, so that's one very key thing to take note of. So what? Let's continue the motion. The same thing. We just reverse it. So this leg is trying to like come forward, right? So at this point, let's say the legs would be more like this. So let's rotate it like this. Let's move it like this. Then this frame moves like this. You know, because I think if you move it for a bit, we'll see how it looks like. So that's what we are trying to get at here. So we'll move this a bit. And then this should be like maybe here. All right. So once I'm done with that, I'll select everything again, A, I, and keyframe. So we have the legs moving, right? I think this is a bit too far. Let's make this closer a bit. Maybe more like here. Okay, so we have the legs moving, right? Then probably the last thing we'll move is the last passing position for the last angle, which will be somewhere around here. Move this here, select this, move this here, move this here again. Basically, yeah. So let's confirm that that's correct a bit. So when we move the pretty much correct. Okay, so let's select everything again. A, press I, and keyframe it. Now, if I were to just play this like this, you see that the legs are moving, right? And of course, this is where, and that's why whenever I animate, actually, I love to put the frames close together. Like, I love to put them like close together like this. Now, don't forget, whatever you have selected is what will show here, right? So if something is not keyframed and you select it here, it's not going to show the keyframes here. That's why I always recommend that you select all the controls so you can see all the keyframes, right? And then move them accordingly if you want to make any changes. So if I love seeing things like this. Let me zoom in a bit. So I will just see all the keyframes, right? I can expand it later on. But so from here to here to here to here. Now I can now say, okay, I want it to be faster or slower, right? So I can always come over here and drag it to make it last longer, right? Let's say I want this to last for this amount of time, this amount of time, and this amount of time. So it's like this, like this. So you see the legs are moving. And this is literally just, so we can loop this animation, right? So this is literally all we need. Just 4 frames are what we need essentially for a work cycle. Just 4 frames. Because it's just, you're going to repeat. It's going to go back to how it was in the beginning. So we can literally just copy this beginning frame and drag it over here, right? And how do you duplicate a frame? You select it, then you press Shift D, and then you can move it around to duplicate it if you want. So now, what happens is that, there is a loop, a perfect loop. It's a perfect loop, right? So I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to make it end here at frame 17. And what happens now is, see, it's going to keep looping. So he looks like he's walking, like it's continuous, but it's just 17 frames that we have here. Let me see how do I save this. Okay. So from here, we can begin to fine tune the animation because we already have the legs currently animated, right? And of course, when someone walks, the person doesn't just stand like a robot like this. Obviously, the body responds to the force. So from here, we can now begin to think of things like squash and stretch. Think of things like ease in and ease out. So many things appeal, right? So many things we can begin to consider. But one major key you will need as an animator is observation. And of course, don't be afraid to use references. Don't be afraid to use references. At this point, you see that the legs. So if you break it down, first of all, the hips look too stiff, So people don't walk like this. People don't walk like this. The legs might be correct, but something is off with the body because the body is just so stationary. So what I would do, right? I know that at this point in time, the body is still quite relaxed. But when it comes here, the body is lifting up. The legs are lifting the body up, okay? So if I even check here, you can see that that's why we have a grid here. This is a very nice video because this shows us a grid that shows us when things are going up and when things are going down. So let's observe these hips very, very closely. So the hips are like at this position number 8 around here. But then when it gets to the passing position, what happens to the hips? What happens? The hips have gone up, right? Because the leg is straight now, so the hips have to like adjust. So we can apply that same principle to our animation. So when the legs go down and stretch, the hips go down as well. So we can also make that to affect our animation. So we can animate the hips now. So let's say at this point, the hips will be like this, for example. Let's bring it down a bit. So let's say the hips will be like down like this, right? But then when it gets to, let's see. Okay, yeah, when it gets to these points, let's say the hips will be a bit higher as we saw before. So I'm going to move the hips higher a bit, right? Then when it comes down here, the hips go down again. So I'll move the hips down a bit. Then when it's here again, the hips go up. Then I will just simply duplicate this beginning one and drop it at the end like we did before. So now what do we have? The hips are now moving. It now looks a bit more believable that he's walking because the hips are responding to the action, right? So what next? So this is how you break down. You don't just try to do everything at the same time. You can, but a more sensible approach would be to do it step by step. Just like how you want to do a design, you don't just start doing the final thing. You consider the layout, you consider the colors, you consider things, and you break them down before you begin to like go into detail. So what we're doing now, we're just looking at we're building it up step by step, right? So we have done the legs are correct. We are doing the hips now. The hips are still, currently, Now let's look at something very interesting that happens to the hips as well from the front position. Now, when the hips, let's look at this too. That's why we have the front position here. Okay. So now, you can see that when the legs, let's look at these legs here. Now I want you to look at the angle of the hips, right? Look at the angle of the hips. Look at the way the hips are. Now you see, just look at this curve here. So it's like when the leg, is at this passing position, for example, the leg that is touching the ground, that hip is higher than the one that is not touching the ground. If you can see, there's a slight curve here. You can draw a line like this. So it means that there is an elevation, in this part of the hips towards the right because this leg is actually touching the ground. So it's lifting up the hips higher. So obviously that applies to this other leg. So when the other leg touches the ground and there's this contact to the ground, this hip curves, it tilts to one direction, which is the direction of the leg that is currently at the contact position. So that would inform our animation as well. So from the front position, basically, when we have this passing position, the leg, which is this leg, obviously we now know that it should be like this. the hip should be like this. Let's see. Let's check out what this does. So you can see that there are different controls for different things. You see, when we do this, see the whole body moves, but I just want the hip. So I think this controls just the hip rotation, right? This particular control here. So we see we have so many controls, that we can play with. But let just do it step by step. So the hips rotation at this point, I think that's the correct. Okay, yeah. So the hip rotation at this point is should be more like this, as we saw before. Then when it comes here at the passing position, it's switched to the other side. So we have this. Okay. So now I think that's too much. I don't want this person to be a female. Looking too much. I'll reduce that rotation a bit. Then this is so okay, just a bit. So this is how you so it's slight things like this that you do that make it more believable, right? That add to the believability of your animation. So let's just quickly move to something else so we don't waste too much time on this. So let's look at the back now, like the torso, essentially. What happens? And I think at this point, this girl is very straight. She's walking so straight, like I don't know. Maybe they told her walk in a very straight way, but I don't like the way this back is also straight. I want to be more expressive. So this is where I would use my own creativity to sort of exaggerate it. So but I can see that at the passing position, the back just remains totally static, right? So it's like straightens up a bit, I guess. Then when it comes here, I don't like the way she's standing. So I would do something else. I would use my own style. I'll play with it. So let me just try something. So let's assume that let's say the character is like walking, and then I want it that you know maybe at this point his back is sort of like this, which is fine. So I'll rotate this a bit. Maybe he's like this, for example, which is fine. But then when it gets to this, maybe to this position, maybe his back will sort of bend, maybe because of the way the hips are moving up. This is just my own touch to it. Then maybe when it's back here, the back will be like this. Then when it comes over here, um, so from here, I'll rotate this again. I think that's too much. So let me reduce that rotation a bit. So I'll have this here. Okay. Okay, so we have this. Let's move this a bit. So there's something off. So I'll select this. I need to make sure that these two are the same because it's just a loop. Okay. So I'll select this first one, Control C and Control V here. So it's exactly the same thing. But there's something very, very funny going on here. I don't like the way it's shifting at the end. So there's probably something I added that's causing that problem. All right, and see how it looks weird. So let's see. So what I would do, let me just copy exactly what I have here. Control C, Control V. Still something weird. Probably it's because of the distance. So let me move this a bit. Move this back a bit. Okay, then let me move this back a bit again. Okay, let's just leave that for now. But I really don't know why that's happens. It's sort of annoying. Okay, so I'll copy this. Let me try again. Let's delete this first of all. It should be exactly the same thing. It should not be different. Oh wait, this then this. It's not even correct. So that's the problem. It probably didn't copy. So let me delete that. Select this Control C and Control V. This is very interesting. Okay, it's working now. It's probably just a what do you call it? It's probably just a bug. I don't know. Probably because I'm using a very recent version, so I don't know if it has problems. But yeah, I guess it's working now. So apparently Control C, Control V doesn't work on this my version. So yeah, I use Shift D to duplicate that frame. Okay, yeah. So essentially, let's see what we have here. Okay. Let me see what else we can apply and attach here. So maybe I'll just use let's just try and animate the hand so it doesn't just look so static. So from what I can see here, when the left leg is at the front, the right it's like opposites, right? So the right leg or the left leg is at the front, the left hand is at the back, right? So it's like an opposite shift. If you observe it very closely, you see that while this leg is moving forward, this hand is moving back, right? While this is moving forward, this is moving back. So that's how people walk. People don't walk and their hands move together, you know. While the left leg moves forward, the left hand moves back. While the right hand moves back, left hand moves the right. While the left leg moves back, the left hand moves forward. That's just the idea. So from that simple observation, can simply know how this would go. So at this point, why this like this? This would probably be more like let's see. I think can I rotate this like this? Let's try. I want to see how I can move that hand. So you have to see, so you know each rig has its own settings, right? So you have to figure out how each rig what moves what exactly. That's just the idea. So I'm trying to figure out what moves the hand, because that's a very particular thing for this particular rig, apparently. So apparently you have to move this, you have to rotate this before it moves. So yeah. So what we'll do now is that we'll rotate this just I think like this. Yeah, this should be more like this. Then when this is like this, it's gonna flip the other way around. Right? Then when this is like this, just gonna duplicate this and drop it here. So the hand should be correct now. Yeah. So let's do the other hand. So the other hand. So while this is like this would move like this, right? Okay. So I'll just come over here and duplicate this as well. So if we play this back, the hand should be moving. Yeah, so that's the general idea on how you do a walk cycle. Now, this is a very generic walk cycle. People walk in different ways. If you are trying to do a cartoon, a sad character walking, it will probably not be like this. You might want to maybe make the back a bit more curved. Maybe it's like sad and he's looking down, it's like, oh, you know, that kind of thing. But for our case, he's just walking straight. like a normal person. But you can really have fun with this work cycle and, you know, even check out more references online, right? So many of them. There's so many of them. Exhausted work, so many, you know. So you can just feel free to check and explore them. And one thing I would say is that once you've done your work cycle, what really sets it apart is the um the details. I'm pasting that link now, the attendance, so you can, if you've not filled your attendance, please check the chat and fill your attendance so you can tick today's class. So what really makes a work cycle or an animation world class per se is the details you begin to observe, right? It's just a normal work cycle. There's nothing too spectacular about it. It's just working. There's nothing too extraordinary about this. But when things begin to get very interesting is when you begin to, you know, look at the details, the fine tuning of the details, what's, you know, how things actually move. For example, if I were to really work on this, you know, I have time, I would make this way better than this, obviously, you know, and I will really break down the motion per time. I mean, right off the bat, the hands have a big problem. If I were to animate these hands a little bit better, you know, I'll probably do something um where, you know, maybe let me see. Maybe when these hands are moving back, right? At this passing position, maybe I would have I'll have the hands, maybe rotate in this direction, you know, to show that the hand is, you know, is being moved by wind, by the wind, right? So when you move something, obviously, you know, if you know physics, it's just normal thing. Every action is an equal and opposite reaction. So when the hand is moving to the left, your hand will move to the right. That's why when you have a brake, when you brake a car, you know, you move forward while the brake moves you back. So using that same principle, because the hands are moving in this direction, I will make this hand to tilt to the other direction to have a sense of momentum, right? It's just little stuff here and there. So, I mean, so at this point, when the hand is like this, I would also use that same principle and move it in this direction. So that way it's like, it has that flow, right? It has that flow. So it has that flow. And you can even see that at this point, you know, you begin to observe curves, arcs that we talked about. You know, the hands now, I can begin to say, okay, let's make an arc of this, you know, motion, right? Well, let's just finish this first. So I think at this point, it should be more like this. I'm going to duplicate that and move that here. So that way, see the hands are more interesting now, in my opinion, because it feels like his wrists are, you know, less robotic, you know, compared to this other hand that is just like so stationary. You can hand is very stationary. So that's how you can begin to apply little details in your animation to make it stand out, you know. But you first establish the key poses. That's the most important thing. Then from there, now know what happens in between. Once you can figure out those two things, and you know, you now begin to observe your reference and, you know, check for little things here and there. And eventually, you know, you should have a very good animation. The more you keep fine tuning, the more you keep tweaking your animation. So while I continue this, I don't know if there any question that anyone has. Please feel free before I move on to the next thing for today. Any questions so far?
Hello, NSN.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, I wanted to ask, how did you get? I didn't see the part where you got this the model for rigging.
Okay, yeah, I will share that link on the group. I got it on Blender website.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, all
Yeah.
right, thank you.
I think that was on the that was on Blender website.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So All right, so I think we any more questions? Any more questions before we move on? So that's the idea. Let me see. Yeah, so when you are done, when you're okay with your animation, you can obviously, like I already explained before now, you can go over to your render settings. You might want to change this from cycles to Eevee. Cycles is a bit more advanced in rendering. It's a bit more realistic and it takes more time to render. So I recommend you use Eevee. If you have version 2.7 downwards, you might not see Eevee here. You might only see Blender render. And I think you will see cycles, but you will not see Eevee. Eevee is from 2.8 upwards. But use Blender render if you have a version lower than 2.7. Yeah, so I'll use Eevee for this, my example. And you can see that my camera already has it here. So I can literally even move my camera to accommodate the the entire shot. So I have to go back to my object mode, right? Select my camera, and then I can I can move the camera to where I want it. So maybe I'll move it a bit here. So right. Maybe let's move it back a bit. This is just one way if you want to like render out your animation to share, maybe for people to watch your animation, right? That's this one way. But a quicker way, besides all this hassle that I'm doing here, will simply just be to record your screen, like I've already been sharing with you guys before now. Just of course, head over to your rig, disable all the options here so it can be very clean, right? Then yeah, just render out your screen or record your screen and share your work with us, because I would like to see what we can come up with. Like I said, this is more advanced stuff. Like I said, we have left intermediate level because we can't remain there forever. But I think from what we've taught ourselves so far, we've learned a lot, and we'll just keep building from there, right? Our capstone project is still very important. We're still very much that's the main focus. But this is just like an extra, let's say, additional course that I'm giving you guys. That is also part of that I put in as part of the curriculum that I set for you guys. Yeah. So I'll quickly just do the same thing in a 2D software. So we balance up everything. But before I move on, any questions before because I think I'll be done with Blender now, and I'll move on to another software. Any more questions?
Sorry, innocent. When you render it, what format does it come out in?
Yeah, you can render it out as a video file or as a GIF image.
Okay.
Yeah, you can set that option here in Blender. So how you do that, in case you want to like actually render it out and not record your screen, you would just come over here to your output settings. You see here, file format, change it to video, FFmpeg video. Select the option here and use MP4. H264 in MP4. Yeah. Then you click
Okay.
here to save to a folder. I'll call this render or ren. Save. Once you're okay with it, you just here and render animation, and it should save the animation. Yeah, but this is like, we actually don't have any lights in our scene, so it looks very weird. This is how it actually looks like. So obviously we have to add lights, if you want to make it look more interesting and more appealing. I've already done this thing before now, so I won't really stress too much on it. But you can actually add lights to your scene. Can adjust the color like I already talked about before. You can as well duplicate a light. You can duplicate the lights, adjust the position, use a different color, use a complementary color. For it to be a bit more interesting. So when you run out your animation, it look a bit more interesting than before. So that's a very quick summary. So I think I saved that in my documents. If I quickly check that. This is what I saved. So I'll just loop it, repeat. So yeah, I think the camera was moving, so I can disable the camera animation. But yeah, just to make it very simple, you can just record your screen. That's fine. So that doesn't have to be so complicated. So once we are done with that, let me now show you how you could use the same idea in a what they call it now. In a 2D software now, not a 3D software. Because like I've already said, this principle does not only apply to 3D, it's just knowing how a work cycle works. So once you understand a work cycle, that's all you need. So I would open up this project in Movo. Like I said, I will share this link to us. I will also share this file in case we want to have this file too for practicing. So this is a demo project I will share with you guys. So like I already talked about, this is a 2D flat object. You know, this is not 3D, this is 2D now, but it's the same idea. So whichever style you prefer or you like, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to just do a work cycle of this character very quickly because let me just stop that. So how do we animate? The same thing goes for Blender. These are all keyframes like we already know in Blender, but I want to remove all these keyframes and start from scratch, right? So what I would do is that I would come over to when I have my you see this layer here, that's the name of our character. So I would enable that. I would select that layer, Mahoney, and then I will go to animation and I would clear the animation from, in fact, from our document, clear it. Now remove every keyframe in our document. So now we have a clear, no keyframes at all. So go to our frame one. On frame one, I would do my first important pose. You see, we have skeletons like we had in Blender. So I'll use my manipulate bone tool and I can move my character based on the rig. So in this case, this is what you select, this option here. So I'm going to try to match. So we have a contact, we have a what do you call it now? A contact pose where the leg, I think at this point we just forget about the hand first. We just forget about that hand first. Okay. So we have, I know not everyone will be able to have this software, right? But if you're interested, I will give you the link and you can also check it out. But Blender is fine, whichever you prefer. I'm just doing this to show you that it's not a matter of software, it's just a matter of knowing the principles and applying them. That's the general idea. It's not a software thing. So let me quickly just do this. Let me move the character correct. This character is quite rig is quite it's quite messed up. Our body is breaking apart. Seriously. Seriously. Okay, so let's use this. So I really don't like. I think I should have used another rig. This rig is very very annoying. Well, let's manage it. Okay, so we have the passing position, or we have the Let me just leave the hand stationary for now. So this is the first pose. Second pose is when the legs pass. So I would move. I move the legs pass. I think the hips as well. be a bit higher. So we have this, then the body moves down, so the legs come down, contact pose as well. The hips probably go down a bit, so so we have this, then the legs go down, and then we have our passing pose as well. We have our passing pose where we so I'm just doing exactly what I did in Blender, right? I'm just applying the same idea I used before now from our reference video, working with the poses, right? Passing pose, contact pose, and then I think there was a mistake here because at this point the leg is supposed to be this leg is supposed to actually go down, not up. So I would exchange that leg. Let me zoom in. Quite annoying. So some people don't actually like this kind of. Some people like 3D animation, So that it depends on what you like, what you are interested in. Some people don't like this kind of style, like more, realistic 3D stuff. Whichever. Okay, so I think the legs are. Let me see. Let me see. So the same thing for Blender. I'll select all the bones, and I can use this option that says freeze bone. So that means I'll keyframe all the bones. Then when I come over here, all the bones, I also freeze them as well. Bone, freeze bone, freeze. Where are you? Yeah, freeze pose. I come here too. I would also freeze. And I come here too. I would also freeze. So that way we have. So now I can really fine tune my animation. I can build it up step by step like we did before now. So maybe the legs are okay, but maybe I don't like the way the body is moving. So yeah, I think someone's mic is on, and I don't know how. I don't know. There's someone's mic that is on, and let me. Okay. Um. Okay. Okay. So let's see. So the legs are moving. Legs are moving. So like this, like this. Okay, so I'll duplicate that just like Blender and drop it here. So I'll make it end just before that frame. Stop at frame. I think that's frame 30. Yeah. So we don't have a perfect loop. So have a very funny walk, but yeah, we have a walk. So we can now begin to like fine tune much of the details, you know. You can begin to fine tune the details. essentially. Let me hide this, blocking my screen. So I can say, okay, let's look at the hips. Hips are funny. Maybe at this point, the hips should be. So at this point, the hips went up, which is fine. The hips went down. Let's see, the hips went up. The hips probably should go down at this point, not up again. So I'll move it down. So let's see. Right? So I can disable the extra options on my screen with that. So the legs. Well, obviously we can't perfect this in this class, but you get the general idea how a walk goes essentially. So we just keep fine-tuning each of the options and each of the properties. Maybe we don't like the hands will just be static like this. You can actually adjust the hand, adjust the torso to bend. Maybe she will bend like this instead. So she's not like, maybe she's like, so maybe let's make her to bend instead of just being straight like that. Maybe she comes like this. Then at this point, she's like this. And at this point, she curves very much. Then we just repeat what we have at the beginning. Here again. So when we play it, we have this funny character. Essentially. Yeah. And what probably, you might be wondering that why is looking, maybe the background should be moving, right? So we can also animate the background, even as this 3D scene goes as well. Most times you don't have to move the character, you just have to move the background. That's a very nice trick that you should just pay attention to. So most times you don't have to move the character, the background could just be moving instead. Whichever you prefer, right? But this is how it works like goes. But whether the background moves or the character moves, this is how someone walks. So learn how to do it in a static position first. Because most times, to be very honest with you, in animation, it's not the character that moves, the background that moves. Is actually very common. So that's not really a problem. Moving the background is not hard. You just keyframe here and here. So let me just assume that, for example, I had, let's say, a very large scene, right? Where maybe this is a very, very big ground or something. Let's move this up a bit. And then let's just assume that maybe we had like other things in the scene, right? Maybe this one was here, this one too was here, this one too was somewhere around here or something, right? So, I mean, what I might even do, because you will not even know the difference actually, you know. Let me first remove this animation from this camera. I don't like this animation there. So if I were to animate the background moving, you will not know what's actually moving. So let me keyframe this position. Maybe let's start from here. We'll keyframe that. Then we'll move down here, and then we'll move it further like this, and then we'll keyframe it here. Now if you play it, that's probably like very fast. That's probably too fast. Maybe let's move it a bit. So it's not like as if it's just floating or something. Let's adjust this one further. you know. But it's sort of hard to tell. You can't really tell what's moving per se because, if we don't have anything opened up. The burrito, I think normally when you walk forward, not back. This is you moving forward, not backwards. So yeah, that's a. Let me flip the frames. This will be here. This will be here. That makes more sense. So that way, just because it stops, right? So even when we talk about ease in and ease out, it's also here, because if you tell this background that's moving now, at the beginning it's quite slow, then it's fast, then it's slow again. So that's what we call, in After Effects, easy ease, right? But it's just a combination of both easing in and easing out. So we can actually just adjust those settings from here. If we select our frames and we right click, you see where we have interpolation mode. You see we have so many curves here, but an easier way is just to check it out here. Easing mode. You have automatic easing. After Effects calls this one easy ease. It's the same thing. You have ease in, ease out, easing and ease out. So you understand. So I can do an ease out. So at the end it's quite slow. So or I can change the ease position just like After Effects. So I mean, the same principle I taught you in the beginning applies to every single app that you see. Open up mobile is the same thing. Let's move our background, for example. So this is my background layer. I would select this. So let's say the background is like maybe like this at the beginning, right? Then around here it's like it has moved. No, she's actually moving forward, not backward. We'll do it like this first. I will now flip the frames again. So you can't tell what's moving, right? You can't tell that you just know that something is moving, right? So that's the idea. So I can also adjust the easing in every software has it. I'm just gonna say that it's not a matter of software, right? So if I do the same thing I did in Blender, I would right click and see them the same thing again, ease in, ease out, ease in, ease out. So right? So I can also do an ease out, and it's the same thing it will achieve. So that's why when I was saying, when I'm teaching you the principles, it's not a matter of software, it's a matter of knowing how it works and what makes it work. So if you did not skip those lectures on animation principles, when you begin to see an animation, you know how to adjust the easing in. Whether if you ease it or if you ease it out, or those kind of little details, you'll be able to actually know how to apply them in your animation. And we can also adjust, not just, we can adjust particular keyframes. In this our scenario now, where we have this character here, right? Let's go back to our pose mode. We can actually adjust the easing in of each particular object, right? Like when we have, let's say, the hands now, I think the hands are rotating. I think so. Yeah, we're rotating this hand before. We can even adjust the easing in or ease out. Let's say we want this thing to ease out here, right? I can select these two frames and come over here and use ease out. That happens. So when the hand is at this point, it's going to be quite slow compared to the beginning, right? So I can literally go through and fine tune each frame, like that. And for, like I told you, what you have selected is what we show here. So because I have the wrist selected here, it's showing you all the keyframes for the wrist. If I have something I selected, it's going to show me keyframe for the thing I selected. So you can literally go through every control after you have done the general animation and just begin to fine tune the animation step by step. So there's nothing really too, complicated about the whole work cycle, essentially. Now it might be complicated to someone who doesn't know how to do it, but that's why I broke it down for you. Of course, I didn't learn this in a day. I didn't just know it in one day, but hopefully it has given you a bit more understanding on how you can actually tackle a work cycle, because these things might look complicated, but that's if you don't know how it works. It's not that complicated. Um, yeah, so I think that's what we'll end for now. So I will just have to share the link, share the files with you guys on the group. Then from there, we'll continue with our class. But like I told you, this is just an extra class, right? It's good that you know this, because this is actually where you're not going to apply the things you've learned into if you are interested in this kind of animation, right? But our capstone project is the same. continue working on your capstone project. That's the most important thing for now. It's if you are done with that, then you can ask, okay, let's look into some of these things. But of course, if you have spare time, check it out. Let's see what you can also come up with before next class on Friday. Then also you can actually add this to your capstone project. Who knows? Find a creative way of adding it. Because you can actually export this as I already said before, as a video file, right? So you can take this to After Effects and work on it. So any questions? I think we're done for today. Any questions before I round up this class? If not, we'll see you or we'll see on Friday. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Okay. So I believe there are no questions. So if I know that this might not really be the easiest thing for you to understand at first, but what I'll tell you is that just go over the video, watch it again, and as you practice, that's the key word, practice, you will learn. And if you have questions, you ask on the group. So the more you make mistakes, the quicker you learn. But if you are scared of making mistakes, you will never learn. You will just remain where you are. So that's what I will just tell you. So let's see what we can come up with before our next class. But like I said, please focus on the capstone project for now. This is just more like a spare time thing, essentially. Yeah. But like I said, we're gonna like side by side capstone project, this animation, and yeah, we'll see what we can come up with um by next month as well. So thank you guys for coming. I know I said a lot of things today because it's actually a lot, but I have to just quickly go run through everything so we can cover what we have for today. So that's why it's recorded. So go over and watch it in your spare time. Okay, so thank you for coming and do have a wonderful day. Please don't forget your attendance. I filled your attendance before you leave. Before I end this call, please fill the attendance.